My name's Landon Yamaoka, and I attend the Palo Alto Buddhist Temple, or that's where I grew up at least. Why I chose Jodo Shinshu is, I guess it's the religion that I did grow up with. I never expected to come back to temple after a certain age. My agreement with my mom was that I would go until I turned 18, and then I wouldn't have to go anymore. And since I was held back as a child, that really meant that after my junior year, I was excused, at least for my family's needs, to come back to church. And I decided to go back just my senior year because I had made friends with the minister's son at my church. And it was just him and I. So he said, if you don't go, then I'm by myself. And I was like, okay, well, I could come back, but after this, probably never going to come back outside of Wong. My Sunday school teacher was very patient with me, and I guess our class growing up, we were pretty bad. Yeah, pretty bad. So he kind of let us get away with whatever we wanted, but he would interject like, can I just teach you 5 minutes of Buddhism? And to me, at that time, Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism, there wasn't any difference. It was just something that this man was trying to teach us. But something did stick with me growing up between him and my minister, and eventually it did lead me to coming back to church. I was actually thinking about this today, getting ready. My Sunday school teacher told me something that he said was a life saying, but it had a Buddhist message, and it involved going to the bathroom, so I thought it was funny, and I guess that's why it stuck with me. But he told me that if you can view your life through a Buddhist way of thinking, think about a roll of toilet paper. So he said when you have a lot of toilet paper, you kind of waste it. You don't really feel like it's important to you. But towards the end of the roll, you get a little more choosy on how much you use. And as I got older, I think that started to maybe resonate with me. As I started to kind of come to terms with the fact that I wasn't maybe the best person in the world, I just happened to take a class on Japanese religion, and Jodo Shinshu was one of the things, and I was amazed that we were learning about something that I already knew about. I was like, well then, at least that third of the class will be pretty easy because I've learned this before. And I didn't know anything that they were teaching us, and I actually thought the teacher maybe didn't know what he was talking about, but I assumed that if you just, stick it out, maybe you'll learn something. And obviously once I got back to California, I asked my minister, like, hey, all this stuff we didn't learn. He was like, oh yeah, no, we didn't really teach that to you when you were a child, but that is Jodo Shinshu. And if you're interested, here's some books you can read. And one of them was on the Akunin, which is my favorite subject, or thing in Japanese, Jodo Shinshu, I guess, sayings. But kind of appreciating that made me come back to church. When I got out of college, I wasn't doing very good. I had maybe decided that I had become too bad, and I couldn't really figure out what to do about it. And I knew I needed to kind of stay out of trouble and get a job and fit into society. And I wasn't doing well. And some of my coworkers told me that you should go back to your church. Maybe there's something there that can help you. And I was like, again, I don't really know about this whole Buddhism thing, but I'll give it a shot because it's not going to make it worse. And it didn't. And I've learned a lot, I think, over the last 10 years, specifically about Jodo Shinshu. I guess what drew me back was that idea of the Akunin, that like this religion accepts people for who they are, and even like a really evil person can still be part of this religion. And when I was struggling with, I guess, the person that I had become, and recognizing it, that kind of made sense for me to maybe continue to learn about this religion if this is a possibility for me to be part of it and still be included. And I guess that I am included because I'm here and they haven't kicked me out of the school yet. So yeah, I think that's why it works for me. And not just for me, I'm here to learn mostly for myself, but I guess if I found a person in a similar situation to me where they were self-aware enough or open-minded enough to maybe see things from a different point of view, then I would obviously want to share this teaching with them because I know that it works for me, and it doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone. Sorry, I had a timer on, so I went over 5 minutes. But I would like to share it with other people, because if it can help me, then I know there's a chance it can help other people. And I'm not saying this is just the only way, or everyone should be Jodo Shinshu. But if it speaks to them and I can maybe introduce some new ideas to them, then I would like to do that. And that's why I think I'm here, because someone obviously did that for me when I needed it. So, thank you.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Please join me in Gassho. How joyous I am, Gutoku Shinran, disciple of Shakyamuni. Rare is it to come upon the sacred scriptures from the westward land of India and the commentaries of the masters from China and Japan. But now I encounter them. Rare is it to hear them, but I have already been able to hear, reverently entrusting myself to the teaching, practice, and realization that are the true essence of the Pure Land Way. I am especially aware of the profundity of the Tathagata's benevolence. Here I rejoice in what I have heard and extol what I have attained. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to first thank Reverend Kuwahara for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all in commemoration of Shinran Shonin's memorial service, or Hoonko. The topic for today is why Jodo Shinshu. Japanese Buddhism, such as Jodo Shinshu and Koyasan, have existed in the United States now for over 100 years. In that time, more forms of Buddhism began to make their way to the United States. Now we have Tibetan Buddhism, Zen sitters, Theravada monks, and recently Shinyo-en has ascended to much wealth and success. With such a diverse group of Buddhist schools, why did I choose Jodo Shinshu? For the record, I am a big fan of other forms of Buddhism, especially Shingon Buddhism, with the fire rituals, the Gomagyo, and the Tendai Kaihogyo, the marathon monks, nearly walking themselves to death with the end goal of attaining enlightenment. I think Kuwahara Sensei, the reason why he said probably is because he's a little scared that I'm going to convert to esoteric Buddhism or Shingon Buddhism, instead of becoming a Seinen Jodo Shinshu. But again, I come back with, with all these practices around me, why do I choose Jodo Shinshu? Well, the easy answer, of course, is I was born into it, right? I think the majority of us in this room were born into the sect, or were brought into the sect very, very early in our lives. Many of us remember going to church at a young age. I remember my experience. They just left, but I was actually going to call out Reverend Bob and Reverend Patty as being my first Dharma school teachers. And actually, it's okay. I think they might have left because they haven't yet forgiven me for switching over to the foreign Buddhist church. So, I don't take it personally. Anyways, going back to the subject, why Jodo Shinshu? Well, to me, Jodo Shinshu is the school of Buddhism where we are made aware of our own Bonbu nature. We like to feel a great sense of pride in our accomplishments in our past. However, the reason why I love Jodo Shinshu so much is because it again teaches us the absolute importance of interdependence and acceptance of our Bonbu nature. In the above statement that I just quoted from Shinran Shonin, he refers to himself as Gutoku, or foolish, or stubble-headed Shinran. Not necessarily to beat himself up or berate himself, right? But I think of this as being fully aware of our foolish nature. The other theme of the message in his quote in the preface of the Kyogyo Shinsho is gratitude. And so Shinran expresses his gratitude to the many causes and conditions that led him to hear the teachings of the Pure Land Way. I appreciate the story of Shinran, even if it is sort of hagiography, because it tells the tale of a man who goes through a lot of internal struggling in trying to free himself from his base passions that weigh him down in this world of samsara. However, once he was able to find his master Honen, Shinran was able to come to the realization that he cannot fully rely on his own self to free himself from his passions and attachments to this world. I appreciate Jodo Shinshu today because it has taught me that there is still hope despite my limitations. My base passions are still there. Jodo Shinshu teaches us that we are foolish beings, but it isn't just for the purpose of berating ourselves. I believe that there is a level of acceptance of our natures. With that acceptance in mind, we then continue leading the best life that we can. For me, I could keep refining myself. I could get better at writing. I could become a top-notch Aikidoist. I could get really good at chanting. I could even run a marathon. I might even become a nicer person. However, my passions and pride still exist, right? Many of you don't know this now, but recently I have lost 25 pounds. I went on a very strict diet and more exercise, and I took off 25 pounds. Now, the good part of me wants to say, well, I did it just because, I want to be healthy and I want to be healthier and I want to set an example for, those who want to be healthier as well. The pride and foolish part of me goes, I want to look good. I want to go to the beach and look good, right? So with this in mind, I'm grateful to Shinran Shonin and his teachings for making me aware of my foolish nature. And I will try to continue to self-reflect on my actions and studies as I continue my education. And so before I close, I would actually like to, again, call out Reverend Bob and Reverend Patty, who just came back into the room as being my first Dharma teachers. Thank you very much. And if in closing, please join me in Dasho. How joyous I am, Kutoku Shinran, disciple of Shakyamuni. Rare is it to come upon the sacred scriptures from the westward land of India and the commentaries of the masters from China and Japan. But now I encounter them. Rare is it to hear them, but I have already been able to hear. Reverently entrusting myself to the teaching, practice, and realization that are the true essence of the Pure Land Way. I am especially aware of the profundity of the Tathagata's benevolence. Here I rejoice in what I have heard and extol what I have attained. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
We begin by reading a passage from the Tanisho. Tanisho is a record of the teachings that Shinran Shonin gave to people when they came to ask him questions, and people that he met with one-on-one or in groups to talk about the Dharma. So this is one of the key passages in my life of the Nembutsu. I want to share it with all of you. I'll talk a little bit about it on my talk today. Please join me in Russia. The Nembutsu, for its practicers, is not a practice or a good act. Since it is not performed out of one's designs, it is not a practice. Since it is not done through one's own calculation, it is not a good act. Because it arises wholly from other power and is free of self-power. For the practicer, it is not a practice or a good act. Thus were his words. Namanda.
Namanda, Samanda, Samanda.
Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see you all here. I too am grateful to Kohara Sensei for giving me this invitation to speak to everyone this evening on the wonderful occasion of the Hoonko service here at the Jodo Shinshu Center. Kohara Sensei said the topic was why Jodo Shinshu? And as I was driving over here, as ministers do, driving over thinking about what I was going to talk about. Fortunately, the traffic was horrible, so I had a little extra time to think about what I was going to share with you all. But there were a couple of episodes that I wanted to share with you, just briefly, kind of by way of sharing my appreciation for this teaching and how I wound up here. this afternoon at our temple in San Mateo, this morning and afternoon, we had the opportunity to listen to the Dharma talks that are being on a live feed from Honganji. This probably right now they're finishing up the Hoonko service at Honganji, and this morning they were just finishing up their all-night Dharma talk sessions that they do, starting at 5 p.m. and going to about 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. the next morning. So we were watching that, and one of the ministers who was speaking raised this question of, if not for Shinran, ... where would I be? And as I was listening to that talk and reflecting on it, it occurred to me that I wouldn't personally have a place in the Buddha Dharma. I wouldn't, I think, be able to feel my life grounded in the teachings of the Buddha were it not for Shinran. So I wanted to share a couple of experiences with you along my path that sort of one that kind of disoriented me a little bit within Buddhism, and then one that I felt brought me back home here in the Nembutsu. My first encounter with Buddhism was through the Zen tradition. I grew up in Minnesota. There are several Zen centers in there, founded by a teacher by the name of Dainin Kadagiri, who came from Japan and spent some time here in the Bay Area. He was in San Francisco with Suzuki Shunryu Roshi, which many of you may have heard of. And then Suzuki Roshi had several students from Minnesota, and when they were moving back to Minnesota, because it was too expensive out here, I imagine, they asked Suzuki Roshi to provide them with a teacher, and so he encouraged Katagiri Roshi to go along. And so there were Soto Zen communities, Zen Buddhist Zen centers, where people would go and do Zen-style meditation, and that was my first introduction to Buddhism. And I remember going there to these places and sitting and being in a lot of pain physically. It really hurts to sit like that, and asking, will this get any easier? And being told, maybe. It kind of depends on you. Depends on you. Depends on your own efforts. And then also saying, well, I'm really, my mind is just racing a mile a minute. I think I'm supposed to be all, calm and kind of blissed out and zen, right? And they said, well, yeah, but that takes time. And again, that depends on you and your efforts. So I, at that point, was a stubborn, young man, said, I'm going to do this. And so I wound up going to Japan and studying in Japan, and spent some time at a temple there, and was able to participate in some of their week-long meditation sessions, and saw all the monks and thought, I'm going to be like all you guys, and I'm going to shave off my hair. And so I shaved my head, in the sink of my host family's bathroom, and had all these, showed up with all these razor at the top of my head. I think all the monks there probably thought I was a psychopath. Tolerated me during the meditation session. And I remember at one point, my host father sent me a fax. See, in Japan, people still use fax machines, and so this was still, probably 17 years ago, but still, he was sending me faxes, and so I was called. I had a fax. I remember walking into the room of the head monk of the monastery, and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Before you come into my room, you stop and you wait until you're invited to enter. You shave your head, nothing changes. What do you think you are? This isn't a Zen center. This is a temple." I was like, ooh, I almost cried. He's so, such a dressing down, but then it was a mirror to me, saying like, oh yeah, I've got this idea of myself. I'm the good Buddhist. And I saw, I've got this ego that's building up through this practice, and I do this. I think I'm getting good. I'm becoming very Zen, becoming very enlightened, very much on the path. And so I would sort of pat myself on the back and get really self-satisfied when I thought things were going well, and then I would sort of say, I'm not a good Buddhist today. Things weren't going well, and it was all about me and what I was doing. I realized that there was this contradiction, that I was trying to get over the ego. I got that much about the Buddhist teaching. That's pretty straightforward. But as I was pursuing this path, I was becoming more and more consumed by my own ego, my idea of myself as a Buddhist. And so I reached this kind of contradiction point. How can I get over my ego through this path of exercising my ego? I have to wake up early. That requires a lot of effort. To sit in this very painful position, it requires a lot of effort. In Japanese, we use the word gama. Gama. The word me is right in there. And so I felt that, this is a problem. There's this contradiction. How can I overcome the ego by means of the ego? So I wound up drifting away from Buddhism altogether, and I thought there's really not a practical path for me in Buddhism, that maybe Buddhism isn't the thing for me. So I just sort of went on with my life in a sense. I went to graduate school for a couple years. I wound up moving to Japan and working there, but I missed something about Buddhism. I missed something about coming into a space like this, coming before an image of the Buddha, chanting, being part of a community of people who are guided by this teaching. And so I went to a temple in the city where I was living, a place called Miyazaki, and I went to a temple there. And I remember when I first walked in, I opened up the door. It's one of those traditional Japanese doors, kind of like these windows in the back, and I opened it up, and I walked in. There's a gentleman sitting in the front, kind of in the entryway area. He took one look at me, and he got up, didn't say a word. He walked into the Hondo, closed the door behind him. I just stood there like a deer in headlights, like, what's going to happen next? And then he came back with a woman, a very smartly dressed woman, probably in her maybe 50s or so. And she marched right up to me, and I thought, okay, this is the enforcer. She's the one who's going to send me on my way. And she said to me in impeccable practiced English, she'd been waiting to say these words for probably the last 10 years. Hello, my name is Goto. Welcome to Shineji Temple. Please come with me. And she welcomed me, guided me into the Hondo, sat me down, and she got one of these chanting books out, and she said, this is our book. She says, it's all in Japanese. Can you read Japanese? I think I can manage this. She was so relieved. She said, okay, the most important thing I'm going to teach you right now. This is the most important thing that we do. We join our hands like this. This is called gassho. I say, okay, yeah, I'm a little familiar with that. We can do this, gassho. So then we say, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, and then the service started. Everybody chanted. I just followed along, just doing what everybody does. Gassho. Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. I just joined in. Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. And then as the service was beginning, she said, very good, you're doing great. You're doing great. I thought, this is something strange. This temple is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be something I have to master. But she just told me I did it perfectly the first time. She's been doing it for almost 50 years. That elderly gentleman sitting next to me has been doing it for at least 90 years. And she's telling me it's just as good. My Namo Amida Butsu, their Namo Amida Butsu is exactly the same. Just as good. It's not about me and my ego. And then at that point I realized, oh, this is my home in Buddhism. This is my way to get over the ego. This elegant shift from I gotta do it myself to just as you are, very good. It's not about you, it's about turning to Amida Buddha, turning to the Buddha. So Shinran says the Nembutsu, the saying of Namo Amida Butsu, it's not a practice or a good act. It's not something that you do through your own ego, but it comes wholly from the working of the Buddha in our lives. So for me, that's why Jodo Shinshu. I'll conclude here. Invite you to join me in Gassho.
Good evening, everybody. So I guess I'll get into my talk, but one of the best things to learn when you become a new minister, don't wear your boots because you get stuck in the back there trying to put them back on. And you have to be able to work on the fly, because I was just asked, maybe half an hour ago to speak. So it is my pleasure, and thank you so much for allowing me to, on the fly, give a very short message today. When I was given the question, why Jodo Shinshu, the answer came very easily to me. I was able to write my answer within a booklet that the other ministers of BCA also wrote, and very short and simply wrote that it transformed my loss and my grief into gratitude and compassion. And even though this answer came very easily to me, my path to this answer was very, very long and very difficult path. As Sensei said, I have just been assigned to the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, and it's a wonderful opportunity for me, and luckily I'll be able to meet all of you on Sunday as our guests to the service. Like Tadao, I grew up in the temple in Stockton, also right across the street from Sacramento, from Reverend Bob and Reverend Patty, so I've had great Dharma teachers, also a student of IBS as well, and had so many wonderful teachers who are here today, and I'm so happy to see Tadao and Landon as students following so many other footsteps into the ministry, so best of luck to the both of you. I, again, grew up in the temple, but, and I've shared my story many times. When I was 25 and my mother was only 59, my mother had passed away very suddenly. And as I was thinking, well, I know this life is suffering. We know that is the first noble truth. Life is suffering. But I couldn't prepare for suffering like that. My life was turned upside down. I had no anchor in my life anymore. She had died. And so I thought, okay, I've been a good Buddhist. Good Buddhist. What is a good Buddhist? I went to Dharma school. I played ball, like I'm sure many of you played basketball, went to Dharma school. Had perfect attendance, probably for 10 years. I thought, is that what makes a good Dharma school student? But because I was so unprepared for this loss in my life, I was very angry. And because I was very angry, I turned my back from Buddhism, surprisingly. I was thinking, where is the Buddha's love and compassion for me? I always thought, the Buddha loves all of us, no matter who we are, where we come from. But because I was so blinded by my grief, I couldn't feel any of this constant love and compassion that is always there for all of us, no matter what our circumstances. But luckily, through time and through my grief, and through a master's thesis from IBS, I was actually able to see that the Buddha's guiding light and great compassion was always there for me. It always embraces us, no matter what. But again, I think because I was so blinded by my grief, and many of us do get blinded by those three poisons, I couldn't see it. But luckily I did. And luckily I had a mentor like Reverend Matsumoto. So I ventured into his office one day, asked about the program, and the next semester I was an IBS student. I'm not really sure, and I'm thinking about this as we speak. I'm wondering, did my mother have to die for me to become a minister? I'm not sure. But she is always, always a Dharma teacher for me. And also, the Buddha's love and compassion is always there for us too. So I think even though my mother is not here, she's always guiding me. And maybe your friends, your family members have also passed. And just like Shinran as well, is always guiding us no matter where we're at. And so I just wanted to share my story to the ministry, considering I am the newest BCA minister. Very happily, yes. And the Bay District, of course.
Yeah.
And why Jodo Shinshu means so much to me. And I'm so happy to be able to share my story and share the Dharma with everybody else. So have a wonderful weekend, a great learning experience, and thank you, Sensei, for the opportunity to speak. If you wouldn't mind, joining me in Basho. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida
Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Well, today it's interesting. I'm finding myself at a kind of intersection of different points and thinking about different things. Recently, I saw a movie that I think I'm going to put in my top 10 movies. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And you know, that's the movie with Keanu Reeves. It was kind of his breakout role. One of my favorite lines from there is they have to make their report, right, their history report, and they find this, they're reading Socrates, right, Socrates, and they say, "True wisdom lies in knowing that you know nothing." That's us, dude! So, but for some reason, I'm finding myself kind of being able to identify with Bill and Ted. Hopefully more with Ted, you know, Hapa actor and everything. But maybe more Bill, I'm not sure. It's January 2016, and I realized that it was January 1990 that I came out to California to visit a friend. And that's the time that I first went. I walked into Palo Alto Buddhist temple, or was invited by my friend's mom. Didn't particularly want to go, didn't know why we had to go. It was my friend's grandfather's memorial service. I was like, okay, but I didn't really want to go. But I heard the Dharma message, and it lit something inside me, right? It touched something inside me. That's really the first time that I heard the Dharma. I just thought of this while I was sitting there. So I got to look it up and figure out the date. It'd be really interesting if it was Hoonko, huh? If it was January 16th, 1990. I'm not sure, but I do know it was 1990. And so it was a kind of a 5-6 year period of being interested in Buddhism until I decided that, wow, I want to be a minister. I'm kind of feel like I'm Buddhist, but I think I want to be a minister. And so it's this year is 20 years since I moved out to Berkeley to attend Institute of Buddhist Studies. And so just kind of thinking about these things, and then thinking back even further and thinking to myself, I had this thought, I had difficulty as a kid. I had kind of a difficult life. And then I just want to slap myself. I had an amazing life. I had both my parents in my life until I was 30. One of the difficulties that I had that I didn't figure out until high school, senior year of high school, I was a bad student. I had a really hard time getting homework done on time. I had difficulty studying in subjects that didn't interest me. I even had difficulty in studying in subjects that did interest me. And I finally figured it out. First grade, we moved to Germany for a year, and I was homeschooled by my Japanese mom. And I remember just being like, we're just hanging out and whatever, and my mom would be like, "Honey, time to do your homework. Okay, let's do the homework." And it's like, I don't know how much time passed since the last time I did homework, like a week, 2 weeks? But I came back, I did it all perfectly, so I came back like ahead of the class, right? So I had this intellect, but my study habits were shot since first grade. And so part of me is like, I had this difficulty in life. I had these bad habits that got set up. But the amazing thing is, it's because I spent all this time with my mom. Like, I was able to spend this, and that's why I said I kind of want to slap myself. It's like this difficulty came out of this amazing experience where I got to spend time with my mother that most people don't get to. It was like the two of us. We were like foreigners in Germany. My dad was off at work, so we're just trying to get by. I mean, it was great though. I got to go to all these castles and all these different cities. We went all over. That's why I was homeschooled, because we weren't in just one place. My dad was moving to all these different places. And so I got to go. I got to spend the time with my mom and dad. And yet out of that came this difficulty that still plagues me to this day. I still have really hard time setting deadlines for myself. And so I've just been, this past year, the end of this past year was difficult, and I don't really know why. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I kind of found myself looking deeply into myself, finding things I don't like, finding that I do have trouble. I'm great with ideas. I'm the idea guy. I love coming up with ideas, and I feel like I'm really creative on the spot. And that's why in my Dharma talks, I'm just going, right? Because there's something about this pressure that lights this fire inside me. And I feel like I can be creative, but I have a really hard time following through. I have a really hard time making things happen, putting together the pieces, completing a project. Right? And so I think I was thinking about this stuff at the end of 2015, the 2-3 weeks after temple stops, kind of, right? And then Oakland, anyway, we don't have service after the first Sunday, right? So, and even though I had a bunch of makaragyo, there was still a lot of time to just kind of be at home and think, and found myself kind of down. And then I got sick a couple of days into the new year, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to get sick. This sucks, right? I hate being sick. I wanted to, I kind of felt like I went through that dark period, and January 1st, I wanted to kind of come out, right? And it didn't happen. But it was okay. I had to speak to my senior group, and they're all in their 80s and 90s, really amazing group of people. And I realized, while I was sick, I realized I was getting better, right? That I was getting better from a sickness, and that's amazing. Right? Sickness is one of the 4 sufferings that Buddha talks about. Speaking about life as suffering, sickness is one of those. And I just really felt, wow, I'm getting better. I'm recovering. Not all illnesses are recoverable from, right? Terminal illness, you're going to die soon. One of my best friends from when I used to work at Cody's here in Berkeley, his buddy, who's only in his 50s, got diagnosed with brain cancer. Doctors gave him a year. Realizing that even though I have this sickness, even though I don't want to be sick, it sucks sitting here on the couch and my head hurts, and it's a waste of my 2 days off. Why did I have to get sick on my days off? Right? At the same time, coming out of that 2 days later, here I am speaking to these 80, 90-year-olds and realizing, wow, that sickness, maybe that's that got me out of my funk, I think. Right? Realizing, wow, I'm getting better. Okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to try. I've identified some of the issues in my life, and I'm going to try and work on it. I've tried before. I've tried again and again and again. I've gotten better sometimes, and I've slid back sometimes. Right? But really feeling right now, just trying. I'm trying to make my to-do list for the day, right? And print it out and check the things off, right? Get them done. Right? If I don't do that, it just slides. I let it slide. Right? And so just kind of finding this energy in my life, right? To try and work on these things in myself. Now it's really interesting because it's like Shinshu, and yet Shinshu has a side of it of not self-effort. Right? Can I fix myself? Can I change the world? Right? Am I capable of doing these things? Am I really capable of that level of aspiration and discipline? And I do actually find that as much as maybe I'm trying to change myself, I am changed. Right? I feel like I have been transformed. I really feel like the past few weeks that I've been able to get more done. Right? That I've been able to kind of move my deadlines forwards and work towards getting that kind of thing done. And realizing, in a way, it's not me. Right? I do have to put in the effort. I do have to try and make the effort myself. I can't just leave it up to some magical thing. And yet, this magical thing has happened, right? Even almost without my effort. So I'll conclude one of my favorite Buddhist doctrines that isn't specifically Shinshu, but I think we find it in Shinshu too, is the middle way, the middle path. Right? And it's a middle path between extremes. So I think one extreme is to be like, I have to change myself. I got to do it all, and if I can't, I'm a failure. But another extreme is, good enough. I don't have to try. I don't have to do this. It's good enough. Right? Those are the two extremes. And unfortunately, I find myself, me personally, I'm a slacker. I was born in 1970. I'm Generation X. I was spoiled by my parents, right? I really identify with the slacker aesthetic. Right? And I really find that to be kind of a big part of myself. So I have to be careful. I have to be mindful of that extreme, right? That tendency to fall in that direction and just let things slide, right? And try and move away from that. And yet I really feel like any of these changes haven't been because of me. It's not because of me. It's because of that. It's whoever gave me that cold. Right? It's my Momiji-kai senior group giving me that opportunity to have to come up with a Dharma talk. Okay? It's finding these projects and interesting things to move forwards with, to work on, right? Not for me, not to put my name on it and hold up, look what I did, right? But to try and move things forward. You know Matsumoto Sensei's AAA life, right? It's awareness, appreciation, and authenticity, right? But the other night we came up with something, maybe awareness, right? To be aware of myself, aware of what's going on in the world. Appreciation is that gratitude, right? Like I was kind of saying, you know, realizing I have my health, right? I got to take advantage of it. Difficult is it to be born into human life, but now I'm living it, right? I have to live my life trying to get to my fullest potential if possible. But then maybe the third A could be activism, right? Maybe the third A could be, yeah, it's not just about, oh, thank goodness, good, great, I'm so grateful, end of story. Right? But maybe a kind of more active approach. And maybe it's not for everyone, but I feel like I have to kind of activate that in myself. Right? Or it's been activated, maybe. Right? And so in this context of awareness, right, the self-reflection that we go through in Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu, appreciation, awakening to the gratitude to realize how many causes and conditions make this life possible, and all the opportunities that I have, right, and my health, my intellect, right, and then to be active, right, to try and work on that, to try and run with that, to better myself, right? But then I also think we do it in community. That's what's great about our temples, right? That as much as we're working on ourselves, we also are working together with a group of people, and then I think we can work towards a better future, right? Not just for our temples, not just to raise money, but for people in difficulty, because that's ultimately what Buddhism is about, is trying to make all beings happy, healthy, and well. And so I know it's a big goal, and if we can't do it, it's not all going to happen in a day, right? But going into this 2016, it's the beginning of a new year. Hoonko, this time to reflect on gratitude and how much we receive. Right? And so maybe we can take a moment to consider a kind of active approach to this coming year. Right? And that's what I'm trying to do. And so if you like, you can join me. Okay? And then kick my butt if I'm not doing it. Thank you very much. Sure. On this occasion of Hoonko, this memorial service for Shinran Shonin, let us live a life of appreciation, awareness, and activism. Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida.